Welcome to Discover Janesville. My name is Yuri Rashkin, and we are today guests at Codos Coffee Shop here in downtown Janesville. And come on down, have a cup of coffee. Our guest today is David McKay, and Dave has received his PhD in American History from University of Iowa, 2002, served as an executive director of the Milton Historical Society from 2002 to 2007, where he ran the Milton House, an 1844 hexagonal concrete stagecoach inn. You kind of go, what could that be?
Yes.
And a documented Underground Railroad site. He has also taught at UW College Systems, and now he teaches at UW Rock. Dave, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
What attracted you to early American history in the first place?
All sorts of things. I grew up in the Philadelphia area, so I grew up surrounded by it. The house my parents still live in now is roughly halfway between Independence Hall and Valley Forge, and you go through as a kid. You go to all the field trips with the schools.
And the history becomes a little real.
It becomes more real. And then I'm not really sure. When I went to college, I started out actually as a math major, and I got all the way through. I got into a class my sophomore year, and I was there for about 7 weeks, and I realized I had no idea what this professor was talking about at all. But I'd been taking history classes for fun, and it just sort of became, well, this is clearly what I'm interested in, and I just sort of followed along and took classes, and the early American Republic was the field I ended up going into just because the material was most interesting to me.
And probably accessible.
Yeah, I mean, I went to college in Philadelphia as well, so it was all around. And what's interesting about it to me is that it's the now what period, which is what I like to call it. The period I like to study is right after the Revolution. You've got a country, now what? What are you going to do with it? How are you going to set it up? Why do you want to set it? Ben
Franklin said you have a democracy, you can keep it or something.
Yeah,
like
a republic if you can keep it.
Right.
Exactly right. And it's like, well, what are you going to do with it? Everybody, I always like to say, everybody has Plan B for when Plan A failed. But what happens when Plan A succeeds? What are you going to do then? Plan A succeeded. We won the revolution.
Now what?
Now what are you going to do? Why are you going to set the country up with the Constitution the way it is? Why do they think that way?
One of the programs that it's public presentations that you do. The founding fathers did not trust you. Look at the Electoral College.
Yeah. that always comes as a great surprise to people.
Right. Well, the Electoral College is something we remember every 4 years on a regular basis. Sometime in October, we start saying, "Wait a minute, is it still there?"
Yes, it's the Electoral College, which has no football team, but it's always very important every 4 years.
Does it have a mascot?
Probably an inchworm. Who knows? But what's fascinating about it is that every 4 years, people come around and say, "Now wait a minute, this is not democratic.
Right.
Why am I not voting for president? I'm only voting for somebody who will vote for president. Why this isn't democratic?" And the answer to that is, well, no, it wasn't meant to be democratic. It was meant as a check on the democracy. That the founding fathers didn't believe in straight democracy. The founding fathers believed in something what was called republicanism, which has nothing to do with the modern Republican Party, but it was a way of looking at politics where you had three branches of government. You had the one, the few, and the many, and they had to balance. The many was the democracy. That's us. And if you had all democracy, it was anarchy. It wasn't, it's just there was nobody in charge.
You had a straight democracy.
You had a straight democracy. It was just,
that would be anarchy.
It would just be anarchy. So there had to be something to put a check on it. There had to be some way for the few, the wise and eloquent few,
do you feel that there's too many checks and too many balances? Or
no, I don't. I think the founding fathers had a point in the sense that democracy can run away with itself very easily. Now, fortunately, it also can correct very easily. So I think they were a little more suspicious than they needed to be. But
they've had a bad experience.
They had a lot of bad experiences. The one thing they were very good historians, and they understood, it's very difficult, for example, to sustain a democracy once the majority of people discover they can vote themselves, funds out of the Treasury, and yet not vote to tax themselves. So you have to do both, and so you have to have some kind of balancing. So I think they had a point, but the world has changed considerably in the last 250 years. So.
And the Electoral College is actually, you say, it's a feature, not a bug.
Yeah, it's a feature, not a. It's there to sort of put the brakes on inappropriate use of democracy. So if you have a demagogue, for example, who just comes in and promises the world and is just very irresponsible, that's the sort of thing that tends to grab people, at least in the short term, before they have time to sit and think, wait a minute, this guy's not on the level. But you only have to be fooled until the first Tuesday in November, and then after that, the guy's elected. So
electoral college is actually our last defense.
In a sense, yeah, it's put there to help protect us from ourselves, in a sense.
It buys us an extra 2 weeks to figure out things.
Yeah, and it does. The problem is that we now believe in democracy in a way that the Founding Fathers haven't. There's a sea change in American politics in about the 1820s and 30s, where most of what we regard as traditional American values really comes in at that point. You're talking about individualism, about democracy, about market capitalism. All those things really take over in the 1820s and 30s. So we truly believe in democracy, and to have this as a check on us really sort of grates. And we find it very absurd, in a sense, where you can have an election, as we did in 2000, where a candidate gets 500,000 more votes than one other candidate and still loses. Assuming the votes were all counted accurately, the Electoral College is the only vote count that counts.
So if it's been around for 250 years,
roughly,
and for 50 of the, and for at least 200 of those years, or 190 of those years, we've been going, why is it still there? Why is it still there?
It's there. It does serve some useful functions, in a sense, because it elevates the importance of the smaller states. If you didn't have this check in there, where the votes are portioned by state and by your congressional representation, no candidate for president would ever go to Montana or Delaware or these small states where the population is really. There's fewer people in Montana than there are in Chicago.
So this is a Rhode Island conspiracy?
It's just it spreads the interest around a little more. So, and most of the time, the Electoral College functions transparently. The winner of the popular vote wins the Electoral College vote, and then nobody really cares.
So you say it should stay?
So far, it hasn't disgraced itself enough that I think it needs to be removed.
That's a.
How's that?
That's cautiously optimistic.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, I'm a cautiously optimistic guy. What can I say?